everyone, and welcome to my latest review slash self-discussion about the Hawkeye series on Disney Plus, Episode 5, the penultimate episode of this season. Granted, they ever decide to do a second season, which I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Hope you're all doing well today. And who's joining me for this little sojourn into comic book nerdery? Jaeger Pony, Gen T Maxi, Funtime Bats, Mike Savage, Noah Asensio. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Okay, well, let's begin. So we start off with what is effectively a sequel to the Black Widow movie, but a sequel to the Black Widow movie before the post-credits scene in the Black Widow movie. Because the Black Widow movie takes place between, I think it's, what was it, before Winter Soldier, right? I think, or after Winter Soldier, but before Civil War. Was that it? Something like that. Anyway, so this takes place before the snap. Let's just put it that way. After Black Widow, but before the snap. And we get a very brief little plot point to anybody who didn't watch the Black Widow movie, and I would understand if you didn't, wherein Yelena Belova, Natasha's quote-unquote sister, and Black Widow 2, in the grand scheme of things, is explaining to us that there are people that have been subject to chemical subjugation, and she has the counter-agent to it. That was a major plot point in the Black Widow movie. The Black Widows aren't doing any of what they're doing effectively under their own volition. They're being mind-controlled. Which is something that I don't really like as a plot device in a lot of instances, because it literally robs the character of agency, but also gives them a complete and total moral escape for their actions, rather than something they have to come to terms with, rather than something that's a flaw or a conflict in the character. And we'll be moving on to something similar to that later on in the episode. Anyway, so we get a little prequel thing where Yelena Belova and some friend of hers, some other Black Widow, are coming up on someone else that they know to be a Black Widow and believe that she's under like the control of the chemical, and they have to free her from the subjugation. And so they spray her with the chemical, and she's like, "What are you even doing?" Because she wasn't actually under the subjugation of a chemical. She was just living her life. And she was being an assassin, not being mind controlled, but making a bunch of money being an assassin. And like, how did you afford this place? By doing what we do, killing people. So then they sit and talk for a little bit about what's been going on and this, that, and the other, and just kind of chit-chatting. It's kind of, it's both incidental and completely pointless. But what then does happen is that what I have to say, of all the things in this episode in this series so far, this next little bit impressed the heck out of me. Now, I obviously can't play it for you because I don't know what that's going to do to the grand scheme of things, but this is, as far as I know, the first instance where Marvel has represented a first-person perspective on what happened to someone during the snap. Because Yelena goes to the bathroom to wash her hands, and she's looking in the mirror, and then all of a sudden, she turns to dust. If I can find the right frame here, because the problem with this thing is finding the right frame. Yeah, are you kidding me? Really? I can't just advance forward like a frame. Okay, so she turns to dust and then reforms in the same instant. Now, we, the audience, know that 5 years has passed, but she's just seen herself disintegrate and then reintegrate, and then the entire surroundings change in an instant. And then she walks outside. The house is completely different. There are people in the house she doesn't recognize, and her friend's there, and she's now there with a husband and a child, and the entire house has changed. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, so you're back." And so she gets the lowdown on, yeah, you 5 years have passed. You just didn't know it, and stuff and things. And Yelena's like, "I need to find my sister." And of course, we know, well, Natasha's dead, but she doesn't know that. Okay, so then, for those of you that don't know, in the post-credit scene of the Black Widow movie, Yelena has gone to the grave of Natasha to mourn her. And while she's there, the Contessa de la Fontaine or whatever shows up and talks to her like she knows her and says, hey, maybe you'd like to get back at the guy who's responsible for your sister's death. And she shows Yelena a picture of Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, with his mohawk, i.e. the Ronin getup. Okay, that's where Black Widow ended. And that's how it continues into this story. So what happens here? We get a recap of the events of the previous episodes, the fight on the rooftop, and then this is Kate coming home after being told by Clint, it's over, you need to go now. There's a Black Widow assassin on us. This got very real very quickly. I just want to remind that up to that point, we had had a giant car chase with explosions, an explosion by which has not been addressed yet. Kate killed 2 people. At the very least, Kate shot an explosive arrow at a van and blew it up and killed 2 people. That has never been mentioned, never been addressed. I just want to keep reiterating that. I mean, unless I missed a part where they jumped out of the van at the last second. A van was barreling at them. She shot an explosive arrow at the van, blew up the van. And again, if they somehow survived or something, I missed that 3-second clip or something. But as far as I can tell, Kate Bishop is responsible so far for the deaths of 2 people. Now, in the grand scheme of superherodom, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But when we have an entire series based around guilt over deaths and murder and trying to come to terms with what you are and being turned into a weapon and this, that, and the other, the fact that that has not been addressed or mentioned continues to stick out like a sore thumb. Anyway, so Kate comes home all dejected because Clint rejected her to her mother. And mom's like, oh, my dear, I love you so much. Oh, I just want you to be safe. And they have a little heart to heart. I took some notes. I actually took some notes this time. So I'd have some reference material because it's been a busy day for me. Anyway, they have mother and daughter heart to heart. And in the course of this conversation, Kate tells her mother everything that they found out about Jack Duquesne and his connection to Sloan Incorporated and how he's sketchy and everything else. She lays it all out to her mother. All right. So, yeah, I mean, what might be a bad idea? Now, her mother is cleaning her wound. I just want to point this out because I'm sure this will come up elsewhere. I'd be surprised. Screen Crush does a regular review of these things for Easter eggs and stuff. And I just want to point this thing out on the off chance I beat Screen Crush to the punch. Her mother is tending to her wounds, as we saw happen with Clint and Kate about 3 episodes back. And the lesson that Clint taught Kate is that when you're trying to address a wound, you put little tabs on it that are going perpendicular to the wound to try to, squeeze it closed and close it shut. Whereas mom, she puts the Band-Aid on along the wound. Now, I don't know if that's significant to anything. I think it just shows that mom isn't combat experienced, which makes a lot of sense, I suppose. But it's just one of those things where it just kind of sticks out. It just kind of sticks out. I don't know. It's kind of symmetry or something. And mom knows how to, doesn't know how to heal a wound, but Clint does, kind of thing. I'm sure there's something very symbolic and deep going on there. Anyway, so yeah, Kate tells mom everything that she knows about Jack and suspects about Jack. And then we jump over to Maya, or Echo, as she will later be called. And she's also tending to her wounds after the fight on the rooftop. And she's there with her boyfriend, Kazi. And she says there was someone else there tonight talking about Yelena. And Kazi's like, this is getting too far. And he's like, you need to stop this hunt. And she's like, but I'm so close. And he says, look, okay, once he's dead, this stops, all of it. And she's like, okay. I'm like, of course it stops when he's dead. If the whole point of her vengeance streak is to kill Ronan, of course everything's going to stop when he's dead. What? Okay. Anyway, then Kate, remember the apartment that Kate lived in at the beginning of this series? The apartment that the tracksuit guys burned down with Molotov cocktails? The apartment that we haven't returned to since? Well, it took me a minute to remember what this place was because it hasn't been talked about or referenced in so many episodes and consequently weeks. I thought, where are we? Oh, and now my phone's ringing. I will have to call them back. So this is her apartment after it's been burned out by the arson. and she's returning to it. And her reaction while walking through it is one of like shock. She's got all this surprise on her face and like, what's going on? I'm like, did you not understand that your apartment was on fire, when you left it the first time? But yeah, she's acting very weird. Like it's surprising to her, the destruction. And Yelena's there. Yelena's there making macaroni and cheese. And Kate's like, the fuck? And so Yelena just has this really casual conversation with her. I assume that we're talking like the Rush, the stereotypical Russian form of interrogation. I think is sort of the classic thing. You don't like hold somebody under the hot lights and use rubber hoses on them. You sort of chat them up, get them on your side, kind of thing. I think that's what they're hinting at here. Anyway, the whole conversation, just on a writing aspect, character interaction, is very awkward and falls flat. I guess it's supposed to be humorous in a way. Maybe that's the point. I don't know. I just felt like it was dragging on. And yeah, we get it. Okay. She's trying to talk her into eating macaroni with her. And so Clint is now retreating back to Grill's apartment. And who's Grills? Remember Grills was the firefighter who was LARPing? Yeah, he's now part of this. There's a character called Grills in the comic book, Hawkeye comic book, who is a completely different guy. He was called Grills because he barbecued a lot. I don't know that they've ever introduced why they call him Grills in this iteration, but anyway, so Clint comes back up here to, I don't know, just recuperate or rest or something. We'll get to it. It's bizarre. Anyway, so Kate still has this conversation with Yelena. Yelena's like, yada, yada, yada. I can't wait to see the sights. It's my first time in New York. Have you ever eaten reindeer before? I want to see the Christmas tree in Times Square. It's all very bizarre. And then Kate Yelena then relays to Kate everything that Yelena knows about her. Like her university GPA, senior double major, her mother's name, etc. And finally she says, and I can't fall on the frame, obviously, because I couldn't possibly be able to do that. Kate says, okay, we get it. And I found it interesting. She says, we get it. The royal we. It almost felt like the people writing this understood what a silly trope it is to have somebody start relaying to the character who knows this stuff, consequently the audience, as though it's exposition that we need, except we don't. But Kate says, okay, we get it, to stop her. And I thought, is that a little bit meta? Because I was getting bored having this very hackneyed, cliched spy interaction thing take place. Anyway, the short version, and I can shorten it up real quick, is that Yelena is out to kill Clint. Right? And she also reveals that she's out to kill Clint because she was hired to do so. And so she asks Kate, where is Clint? And Kate's like, I don't know. And then Yelena leaves. That's it. I mean, there's all this back and forth. I mean, the gist of it is that Kate's trying to convince Yelena that Clint is not a bad guy. Yelena says that he's responsible for Natasha's death, and he has so much blood on his hands, which is funny coming from an assassin, etc. You don't know him. He's a terrible person. He's a monster. And Kate's like, he's not like that. He's a hero. Everybody's got problems, etc. And the thing that I was surprised by in the writing thing, remember, if you remember, I think it was the either last episode or the episode before, when Kate asked Clint what was the best shot he ever took. And he tells her the story of the best shot he never took. And that was he was assigned to kill Natasha and he didn't do it. And he was glad he never did. I was surprised that didn't make a callback here where Kate says something like, you don't know about the shot he never took or something. Trying to like hint to Yelena that there's more to this story than just what she believes on the basis of Clint was there when Natasha died. Although, honestly, I'm still a little bit bewildered as to how the rest of the world knows anything about the particulars of the events that took place in Infinity War, because, or Endgame, since most of those things happen on other planets, or there are very limited witnesses to what happened. I mean, Natasha being dead, I guess you can't really avoid her absence. But the circumstances of it, who was there, all that stuff, that all came out somehow in the public square. It's very, very odd, very confusing. Anyway, so they keep having their little chit chat. And then, as you can see, the scene goes on forever. And it felt like it too, because it just didn't really tell us anything except that Yelena decided to take a moment to have a chat with Kate, all to butter her up to get her to tell her where Clint was. And when she says she doesn't know, I guess she believes her. And Yelena leaves. So then Clint is talking with Grills, and he's like, I'm going to go back to my hotel. And Grills like, hotel? No, man, you're not going to be alone on the holidays or something. You just stay here. And so he falls asleep on the couch with Pizza Dog. And that's it for Grills, mostly, for this thing, until a little bit later, I suppose. Anyway, so then we jump back to Kate's house. And Jack is being arrested by the cops because apparently Eleanor called the cops to let them in on what information Kate passed on to Eleanor about Jack being involved in some duplicitous stuff. Now, here's the police detective who had earlier in the series called Kate and wanted to talk to her about the events at the secret auction that blew up just a day or three before, which still hasn't quite been addressed, still hasn't quite been investigated, and he's still not talking to Kate. But anyway, and Jack is being so cool about this. He's like, no, obviously, I would have done the same thing. I would have called the cops if I had that information. Obviously, I'm being framed, and I'll see you soon. I'll be back for the Christmas party. And Eleanor's like, mm-hmm. And then we jump to Clint over at a memorial for the Battle of New York, where it lists off the Avengers who fought and saved New York. And Clint is there. He takes out his hearing aid and he says a little prayer, sort of, to Natasha. And he says, I miss you. And, it's stupid that I had to lose you to an orange rock. And please forgive me for what I'm about to do. And what is Clint about to do? Well, we're going to find out. Anyway, so Kate is now at home. Jack is in custody. And Clint is out there somewhere. And so we spend a ridiculous amount of time with her going over and calling Clint and leaving messages like, you really should call me. You should call me back. Oh, by the way, Jack got arrested. Oh, that lady from the rooftop, I got something to tell you. And she just leaves message after message. And it's, I guess, meant to be comedic, except it's just kind of irritating. And then she fills up his electronic mailbox and can't leave any more messages. So that happened. Then we got our two track bro guys driving down the street, going back to their little auto body shop or whatever. And as they're there, an arrow comes through the window, but it's not any kind of trick arrow to explode. It's a trick arrow with a message inside. And it says, if I can fall on the right frame here, I probably won't, because why would this thing let me? It basically says, Maya, meet me where you first met the Ronin tonight. And the one funny bit, the one thing that I chuckled at was tracksuit guy number 2 here. After the first guy reads the message, tracksuit guy turns to him and says, "But we're not Maya." I chuckled at that just a little bit. Anyway, so we jump to night upon New York City, and Clint is going out and he's getting ready to do something. He calls his wife to let her know that things have escalated. Things keep getting bigger. And he tells her that a black widow has shown up into the process. And the wife is like, we've been so careful. I mean, we're so far away. We should be fine. And he's like, no. I have to wrap this up. I have to protect us. I have to do what I have to do. And he says, if I don't end this tonight, I don't know. It's just a matter of time before the big guy gets involved. The big guy. Who's the big guy? Well, we already know who the big guy is because we're all nerds. Anyway, so he basically gets his wife's, blessing, sort of, or at least let her know I'm working on it, and she's all understanding and everything. And so he goes to his locker where he put the Ronin suit and everything else previously. And now we get to the big confrontation. Maya's in the middle of the auto body shop, parking lot, and Kazi's on a overlook with a sniper rifle, and various other of the Russian guys are staked out in the car lot. But of course, the Ronin, the ninja, gets the drop on all of them. And then we have a brief little montage sequence of the Ronin taking down all the various Russian mobsters, uh, alive, presumably, not killing them. And then Maya's shooting at shadows and stuff. And of course, she can't hear anything. So when he's making noises and stuff, running around, she can't hear it. She runs out of bullets. And then Ronin shows up. And for a brief moment, I thought, is it going to be Clint or is it somebody else? And yeah, it's Clint. Anyway, so they fight. It's not a bad fight. It's an okay fight as far as choreography goes and everything. She kicks the sword out of his hands at one point, and they fight, mano a mano, so to speak. And then, let's see, he gets the drop on her, and he decides to take off his mask and tell her, "This is me." And he says, like, "Why'd you take off your mask? So I can watch you kill me?" And he's like, "No, but if you or anyone comes after me or my family, I will not stop and come after you." Because he's basically proving to her, "I can take down your entire crew and you leave me alone. This is over with." And she's like, "This isn't over." And he says, "You and I, we're the same." And she says, "We're not the same. You're a monster." And he says, No. We're weapons. We've been used and we've been manipulated. So he knows what that's like. And she's just taking this in. And he admits that he was the one who killed her father. He says, "I was here that night, but he was tipped off by someone who works for her boss." Ooh, yes, your boss. So your boss wanted your father dead. Now he's using you. So this brings up a whole extra set of questions for me, which maybe I'm just dense on. During the 5 years, did Clint work for the Kingpin? Or was he just involved in the underworld to the point where he knew who the Kingpin was? Like, was Clint one of the Kingpin's assassins during those 5 years? I don't know. I'm still a little fuzzy on that fact. Was he working for Kingpin, or was he just, set on a path by the Kingpin indirectly? Don't know. Anyway, so then Maya's about to get the drop on him with his own sword, but then Kate shows up and saves Clint by shooting an arrow and knocking the blade out of her hands. And then Clint gets away, Maya gets away, Clint and Kate meet up. Clint is now without the Ronin outfit. I don't know where he put it. He's without the sword. I don't know where he put it. But now he's back in his regular clothes, and his shoulder got cut in the fight. And then they get away by Uber because Kate called an Uber. And then Maya meets up with Kazi, and he's like, "You're alive," because Kazi was, knocked out by Ronin before the fight happened. And he's like, "Did you kill him?" And I'm like, why wouldn't you know whether she killed him or not? I mean, was there like no body in the parking lot? Why is she meeting you out here? And she's like, "No, I didn't kill him." And he's like, "I'm so glad you're safe." And he says, "Look, I'm sorry. He got the drop on me." And then Maya, now suspicious because of what Clint said, she starts asking Kazi, "The night my father was killed, where were you? You were his second in command guy. Where were you?" And he's like, "What are you talking about? I don't know. I didn't get a call." And so he's like, "Why?" And she's like, "Nothing." And he's like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm sure. It's fine. I'm not suspicious now. It's okay." So then Kate in the car with Clint tells Clint that Yelena came to talk to her, and that Natasha's sister, and Clint already knows her name, Yelena. And now Clint's like, gets all emotional and distant and like, uh-oh. And yeah, she's probably out for revenge, he figures. At least I'm guessing that's what he figures. But the question still is, Yelena's not here entirely because of her vengeance thing. She said she was hired. Hired by who, you might ask? Well, Kate and Clint walk off together, and then we are I should say regaled with Madeline. Is that her name? Anyway, Kate's mom. Kate's mom is walking around in the city, and she's being tracked by Yelena. Yelena's following her and figuring out where she's going, and then Yelena sees her go into a building. And then we jump back to, I guess, Grill's place, where they're eating and playing with the dog and yada, yada, yada. Oh, it's so cute. And then Kate gets some texts on her phone, and they're from Yelena. She says, Kate Bishop, I found out who hired me. Eleanor Bishop, Madeline. Eleanor Bishop, thought you deserved to know. Now, how did Yelena figure out who hired her, or why didn't she know who hired her first? Because here's the thing. At the end of Black Widow, Yelena is approached by the Contessa, right? Contessa de la Fontaine or whatever. The same lady who recruited John Walker from the Falcon and Winter Soldier show to become U.S. agent. So if the Contessa was the go-between to hire Yelena because Eleanor Bishop asked to have Clint killed for reasons I can't quite figure out yet. What? Why? Anyway, so then there's a picture that is sent along with these texts, and Kate asks Clint, who is this in this picture? And he's like, that's the guy I've been afraid of this whole time. Let's see if can I fall on the frame? Oh, yes, there we go. It's the Kingpin. Dun, dun, dun. Yes, the Kingpin back once again, just in time for certain revelations of character appearances in the new Spider-Man movie, which I won't go into because I don't want to spoil it for everybody, although YouTube has been kind enough to deluge me with clips people have taken surreptitiously in theaters of all the spoilers for the Spider-Man movie. And even if I don't watch the videos themselves, and I haven't, the thumbnails alone give away so much. But anyway, yes, the Kingpin, thankfully, is back in the mix. And so he is some kind of associate with, Eleanor. Sorry, I keep forgetting Eleanor. So they're associates somehow, but she hired Yelena to kill Clint. Clint, who killed the head of the tracksuit guys who worked for the Kingpin, but who was tipped off by one of the Kingpin's guys to kill the tracksuits. So the Kingpin indirectly hired Clint to take out some of his subordinates, I guess, or was Clint working directly for the Kingpin? That's the part I'm not quite clear on yet. But it's a very convoluted chain of custody for this entire thing. So for some, again, just to review, for some reason, Eleanor Bishop, through an intermediary, hired Yelena Belova, Natasha Romanoff's sister, quote unquote, and Black Widow, to kill Clint Barton for reasons unknown, but just happened to coincide with Yelena believing that Clinton was responsible for her sister's death. And Eleanor Bishop is also associates with the Kingpin, who was the boss of the guy who was murdered, whose daughter is now on the hunt for the Ronin, who is also Clint Barton. Boy, oh boy, what a small world, huh? So, yeah, that's the episode. Then it cuts off there and we get, the end credits. Now, I don't know if is there a post-credit scene. I always have to be wary of this. No, there isn't. Okay. So there you go. Convoluted. The episode was very choppy. Really, really bad pacing between the talk between Yelena and Kate, and then Kate doing all the phone stuff. The fight was okay. I didn't know what the outcome was going to be exactly. There had been some rumors or some theories that the person who killed Maya's father was not, in fact, Clint Barton, but was someone else in the outfit. There was the possibility that it was Jack, because he's the swordsman. I'm still wondering, what is Jack's role in this thing as the swordsman, aside from his character name being the same as a character from the Avengers comic books? Is he going to do something at some point? Does he have some more substantial role to play in things? I assume he will, but I don't know. There was also a rumor that the person who killed Maya's father was actually Clint's wife. That Clint's wife had previously been an agent or an assassin or some other SHIELD operative at one point, and that maybe she was the original Ronin or something, but that's not the case. It was Clint all the time. And I actually appreciate the fact that they didn't try to throw for a loop, that they actually make Clint responsible for the murders that he committed, all the killings, that they didn't sort of shy away from that or try to remove his agency and responsibility for the bad things he's done and give him a moral escape. You see how when you don't give a moral escape to a gray area character, it makes them more interesting and not just the gas made them do it, or, the bullet in Frank Castle's head was making him do it. I've talked about this before. I really hate stuff like that. But yeah, so there you go. That's the episode. We are one episode away from the end of the series or the end of the season. Don't know if they'll do any more after this. I'd be surprised. But yeah, there you go. I'll give a couple minutes here to see if you guys have anything you'd like to say or add. And then I'll wrap things up. Senior staff reporter and chief Florida correspondent Colleen Byrne, yay! And Yelena had been working for the Contessa for a while in that post-credit scene. Oh, was that? It's been so long since I've seen it. Was that also implied? Okay, so yeah, so someone went to whoever the Contessa works for. Sorry, someone. Eleanor Bishop apparently went to whatever organization the Contessa's working for and asked for a hit to be done. And now, for some reason, Yelena's tracked down who hired her. Why? I mean, the last time we saw her, she was interrogating Kate Bishop to find out where Clint was. What happened between that and her deciding to track down who hired her? How did she track down who hired her? If it was all done through an intermediary, how could she possibly find out or know? These are the questions I have, answers of which I'm not sure I'll ever get. Let's see. Who else? Jonathan Cate, doesn't the sword collapse? Yes, the sword does collapse. You have to hit a button on the side. It's basically a metal lightsaber. So, yeah, it does. So it's easily hidden, I suppose. I was wondering where his... like, he dressed up in the Ronin outfit, and then the next thing we see him walking in street clothes. Where did the Ronin outfit go? Because it was so important for him to keep custody of that and not lose it. But as far as I could tell, he wasn't carrying a backpack. He didn't have like a gym bag or something. I don't know. Let's see. Anything else? One more from Colleen Bernier. The theory is that Laura Barton is Bobby Morse, a.k.a. Mockingbird, a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Clint's wife in the comics, and why she never leaves the farm. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how they're going to reconcile. Let's see. In Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Bobby Morse was a character, named character in that show. And so if they're going to like transpose identities in this one, I don't know. It's difficult to say where Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fits in the grand scheme of things. I guess it technically exists in its own multiverse place now. Although they've effectively merged elements of the Netflix series into the mainline MCU as of this latest movie and as of Hawkeye here. So hard to tell. Yeah. Who knows who Laura Barton is or how she knows stuff, or maybe she just understands him and she accepts Clint for who he is regardless, etc. Who knows? Let's see. Anything else from anybody? Jonathan Cate. So Marvel stretched a 2-part story into 6 episodes yet again. Gotcha. Well, I mean, at least it's 6 and not 13. I mean, we're not talking Jessica Jones territory of diluting the plot line. Because, man, if there's one fatal flaw to the Netflix series outside of the first season of Daredevil, it's that, yeah, they had maybe 5 or 6 episodes worth of plot, but they stretched them all out to 13. And so everything feels like filler in most of those series. Daredevil being one of the few exceptions. Season 2 was, season 3 was all right. Zero depressive. I'm curious, anything about Kate's sexuality? Did they go that way? Not to my knowledge. I can't, thus far in the series, I can't recall that they've ever shown Kate in anything that indicates romantic entanglements or otherwise. So far as I know, no. If that matters, I don't know. And let's see. Anything else? Jonathan Cate, season 2 of Jessica Jones was unwatchable. You're telling me. You're telling me. I think I did a whole series review on that at one point, and my brain just about melted. I forced myself to watch all of the Netflix shows and all their seasons, even Iron Fist, even all the Jessica Jones. Oh boy. Oh boy. And thank you, Kiefer Dam. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you, Kiefer Dam. And yes, everyone, have a good day. I'm going to wrap that up here. There's not much else to say. I suppose all will be revealed and all the secrets will be told and everything will be answered clearly and without any kind of loopholes or missing plot threads or anything else next week, Wednesday, for the final episode of Hawkeye Season 1 on Disney+. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this. Hope you found it at least informative, if not entertaining. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can find me tomorrow night on this channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for another episode of TED Excellence, where we will discuss once more an off-brand TED Talk. Apparently this next time, if pattern holds true, about a toilet. And no, I'm not kidding. And thank you, Point Curation. It's noon. The good day has been halved. Yes, we're now halfway through the good day. Thank you, Point. But everyone, hope you're all doing well. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everyone who donated, thank you. Thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. Hope you all have a good rest of your hump day. Hope the rest of your week goes well. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.